My name is Patricia Moore. I'm 29 years old, and until not too long ago, I thought I had the kind of life most people would call ordinary but comforting. I worked in IT, not glamorous, not flashy, but it paid well, and more importantly, I enjoyed it. I liked the stability. I liked coming home after a long day, making myself a simple dinner, maybe reading or listening to music. Quiet suited me. What I didn't realize at the time was that my definition of quiet would collide headfirst with someone else's need for constant noise, constant attention. That someone was Robert, my boyfriend. When I first met him, I won't lie, I was drawn in. He had this spark about him. He wasn't just confident, he was magnetic. People noticed him when he walked into a room. And unlike me, who dreaded the idea of documenting my lunch for strangers online, Robert lived for it. He wasn't a mega influencer, but with about 15,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok, he acted like one. At first, I thought it was kind of cute. He seemed ambitious, creative, and always excited about something. I told myself we balanced each other out. I was grounded, he was lively. I was private, he was public. He even said once, "So if you keep me sane. Without you, I'd burn out." And that made me proud. I liked being his anchor, his calm after the storm. But slowly, too slowly for me to catch at first, that storm began seeping into every corner of our lives. In the beginning, Robert's constant filming felt harmless. He'd set up a ring light at dinner, ask me to hold his phone while he showed off his outfit, or record little snippets of us cooking together. I would laugh, roll my eyes, and tell myself it was just his thing. Then came the small jabs. He'd stage little scenarios and poke fun at me for his audience. Nothing cruel, not yet just sarcastic remarks delivered with that, "Oh, come on, it's just a joke," grin. But those jokes kept evolving. Once I remember I'd come home exhausted after a 12-hour shift. My hair was a mess, my makeup long gone, and I barely had the energy to eat. Robert had his phone out and pointed it at me before I could even say hello. "Look at my hardworking girlfriend, guys," he said into the camera voice, dripping with faux sweetness. "She's so serious all the time. Can you believe this face hasn't smiled in hours?" He expected me to laugh along. Instead, I froze, suddenly aware of thousands of invisible eyes watching me at my weakest. That was the first crack. Robert had this way of making me feel like I wasn't enough. He'd compare me not to real people, but to imaginary girlfriends living in his head. "I see couples traveling to Bali, babe," he'd say. "They're building a brand together. Why don't we do that?" Or other girls surprise their boyfriends with adventures. "You're comfortable, but where's the excitement?" I'd try to reason. "Robert, I work 10-hour days. I can plan something on the weekend." But the doubt lingered. Was I really that boring? That unremarkable? I supported him in ways his audience never saw. I paid most of the rent because his content didn't bring in steady money yet. I bought him a professional ring light for his birthday. I learned how to keep a camera steady during his live streams, even when my arms ached. I did the quiet, practical things, groceries, bills, laundry, the things nobody applauds you for, the things love requires. But to Robert, love wasn't about showing up. It was about showing off. I began to feel like I lived in two worlds. One was ours. Quiet evenings, whispered good nights, the warmth of him curled beside me. That Robert told me he loved me. That Robert made me believe we were building a life together. The other world was his content. In that world, I was just a prop, the girlfriend character. I was the butt of jokes, the backdrop for his charisma. And in that world, my feelings didn't matter, only reactions did. The line between those worlds blurred until I couldn't tell which was real anymore. There's one night etched in my memory not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. I came home exhausted, but relieved, bag sliding off my shoulder. Robert was in the living room, bathed in the artificial glow of his ring light, chatting animatedly with his followers. His hair was styled, his shirt crisp, his laugh practiced. He didn't even glance at me. "Hey guys, so tonight we're talking relationships," he said, beaming into the screen. I slipped into the kitchen, made myself some pasta, and tried to ignore the constant ping of hearts and comments. I told myself it was harmless. But the longer I listened, the heavier my chest felt. Half an hour later, he finally walked in, still holding his phone. "Soph, can you not bang the dishes so loud they can hear you?" I blinked. "Robert, I just got home. I'm rinsing a plate." He rolled his eyes at the camera as though I were a child throwing a tantrum. "See, guys?" She's always so sensitive. The comments exploded with laughing emojis. I wasn't even in the frame, but I felt exposed, humiliated, like my life wasn't mine anymore. I remember drying my hands slowly, fighting the urge to cry and saying, "Can we talk later?" off camera. He chuckled, kissed my cheek distractedly, and whispered to his viewers, "She's dramatic, isn't she? Watch, she'll calm down in 5 minutes." The worst part wasn't his words. It was the fact that I started to believe him. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing. My mind replayed the scene over and over. His grin, the audience's laughter, the way I had looked small and visible. I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it really was just jokes. Maybe this was the price of loving someone like Robert. But somewhere deep inside, I felt it something had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted, and soon it would grow into something that would tear us apart. Because Robert wasn't satisfied with harmless jokes anymore. He wanted drama. He wanted a show. And he was about to get it at my expense. The days blurred into each other after that night, but the feeling of being watched never left me. Even when Robert wasn't holding his phone, I caught myself stiffening as if some invisible lens might still be pointed my way. I hated that. I hated how natural it had become for my private life to double as his public stage. I told myself it was temporary, that Robert just needed to make it big, that once he secured sponsors and brand deals, the pressure would ease. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't pressure driving him. It was hunger. He didn't just crave attention. He needed it the way I needed oxygen. And I was becoming his most convenient prop. One evening, I came home to find the apartment rearranged. The couch shoved aside, our small dining table pushed to the corner. Robert had transformed the living room into a makeshift studio. "Babe, check this out," he said, gesturing proudly at the setup. Tripod, ring light, backdrop I didn't even know he'd ordered. I dropped my work bag, scanning the mess. "Where are we supposed to eat?" He waved dismissively. "We can eat on the bed. This is more important. You know, content is an investment. Trust me, this will pay off." I wanted to argue, but the spark in his eyes disarmed me. He looked so alive, so certain. So I swallowed my irritation and nodded. "Okay." But inside, I wondered, when had we stopped being important? Robert started including me, more in his videos, often without asking. He'd spring his phone up during dinner, angle it toward my face, and say something like, "Guys, look at Patricia's expression when I tell her I want to quit my job and travel full-time. Ready." My fork would freeze halfway to my mouth. A mix of panic and confusion rushed through me. I wasn't prepared. I never was. Sometimes he'd stage little skits. He'd call me the boring girlfriend or mock my cooking, waiting for the comments to flood in. The viewers loved it. They'd type things like, "LOL, she's so uptight. Bro, you can do better. Savage, I'm dead." I laughed it off for the camera, but the words lodged inside me like splinters. After filming, when I tried to talk to him about it, Robert would pull me close, kiss my forehead, and say, "Don't take it so seriously, Soph. They don't mean it. It's just engagement." But I meant it, and my feelings weren't engagement. One night, the worst of these jokes happened. I'd just stepped out of the shower, hair damp, oversized t-shirt clinging to my skin. Robert was already live phone propped up, audience buzzing. The moment he saw me, his grin widened. Perfect timing, guys. Watch this. Before I could protest, he angled the phone at me. My stomach dropped. "Here's Patricia," he announced, the queen of overreactions. "Let's see what she does when I tell her something spicy." I froze in the hallway, towel in hand. "Robert, not now." "Shh," he hissed under his breath, then looked at the camera. "Ready." "Hey, Soph, what would you do if I told you I've been talking to someone hotter?" Laughter erupted in the comments. Hearts emojis, little knives of ridicule flying across the screen. I stood there silent, heart hammering. He waited for me to cry. He wanted the drama, the humiliation. But I gave him nothing. I just stared at him, at the phone, at the sea of strangers he loved more than me. And in that stillness, something inside me broke quietly without sound. Later that night, after the stream ended, Robert tried to slip into bed like nothing had happened. "Don't be mad, babe," he murmured, wrapping an arm around me. "It's just content. You know I love you." But his words felt hollow, like echoes bouncing off an empty room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a single thought pulsing in my head. He doesn't love me. He loves the version of me he can sell. Over the next days, I moved through our apartment like a ghost. I cooked, I cleaned, I went to work. But my chest felt heavy, as though carrying a secret even I couldn't name yet. Robert noticed, of course. He'd tilt his head and tease. "Why so gloomy, Soph? Cheer up, my followers are starting to think you're depressed." I smiled faintly, but inside the thought formed clearer and clearer. He isn't just my boyfriend anymore. He's my jailer. And the bars are made of glass screens. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. It wasn't supposed to be special. I came home late, exhausted, my bag weighing heavier than usual. But as soon as I opened the door, I knew something was different. Robert was midstream again, but this time his eyes glittered with a crueler excitement. When he saw me, his grin widened like a predator spotting prey. Guys, he whispered to his phone, you're gonna love this. Watch, my girlfriend's about to cry. When Robert said those words, my girlfriend's about to cry, I felt every muscle in my body tense. My hand was still on the door handle bag sliding off my shoulder when he swung the phone toward me. The glare of the ring light caught me off guard. My face-tired makeup smeared from the long day hair falling loose was now projected to thousands of strangers. I froze. Robert's voice cut the silence, cheerful and cruel all at once. Seriously, guys, you don't even know. I could have a line of hotter girls if I wanted. My DMs flooded. The comment section lit up. I didn't need to read them all. The ones that flashed by were enough. Savage bro, you can do better. Dump her, LOL. Their laughter was instant, merciless, faceless. Robert looked at me expectantly, his grin stretching wider like he was waiting for his prize. He wanted the tears, the outrage, the scene. But I gave him nothing. I don't know where the calm came from. Inside my chest felt hollow like someone had scooped the air out of me. My pulse thundered in my ears. But on the outside, I was stone. I placed my bag gently on the floor. My eyes never left his. Not the phone, not the flashing hearts, just him. His grin faltered. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Babe, he said, lowering the phone slightly. Come on, it's a joke. Don't be so dramatic. But it wasn't a joke. It had never been a joke. And in that moment, something inside me shifted permanently. Without a word, I walked past him. I could hear him chuckling awkwardly, turning back to his viewers. See, she's mad. She'll calm down in 5 minutes, watch. But I wasn't mad. I wasn't anything. I was done. In the bedroom, I pulled my suitcase from under the bed. My hands didn't shake. They were steady, purposeful, like I'd been preparing for this without realizing it. I folded clothes, essentials only, work laptop, chargers, a few keepsakes that still mattered to me, not to his content. Through the thin walls, I could still hear him laughing, filling the silence with noise for his audience. Guys, she's so dramatic. Watch, she's actually packing a bag. Should I prank her? Maybe hide her shoes. The cruelty in his tone made my stomach twist, but I didn't flinch. I zipped the suitcase closed. The sound was sharp, final. When I stepped back into the living room, Robert's laughter stalled. He looked at the suitcase in my hand, disbelief flickering across his face. Wait, what are you doing? I met his eyes calm as I could manage. Leaving. The word cut through the room like glass shattering. He blinked stunned, then quickly angled the phone away, muting the stream. Babe, stop. Seriously, don't be ridiculous. I was joking. I didn't reply. Come on, Soph. You're really gonna walk out over a little live stream? His voice cracked with nervousness, but he tried to mask it with bravado. You'll be back in an hour. I walked past him, suitcase rolling behind me. His tone shifted to panic. Patricia, don't you dare walk out that door. I paused just for a heartbeat, my back to him. Then I pulled the door open, stepped into the hallway, and let it close softly behind me. No slam, no scream, no theatrics. Just silence. The night air hit me like a slap. It wasn't even cold, but my skin prickled with goosebumps. The suitcase wheels rattled over the uneven pavement as I walked past cars, mailboxes, the faint glow of apartment windows. Behind me, I could still faintly hear Robert's muffled voice, desperate now, leaking through the thin walls. But it was drowned by the steady rhythm of my footsteps. Every step felt both impossible and inevitable, heavy but freeing. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was I couldn't stay. I ended up at my friend Clara's apartment across town. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with a suitcase, her eyes widened. Oh my God, Soph, what happened? I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. Can I stay here for a while? She didn't ask questions. She just stepped aside and pulled me into a hug. And that's when the first tear finally slipped down my cheek. Not in front of Robert, not in front of his audience, but here in the quiet safety of a friend's arms. That night, I lay on her couch staring at the ceiling while Clara slept in the next room. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages, missed calls, voice notes. Robert, where are you? Seriously, you're making me look insane on live. Robert, babe, come back. It was a joke. Don't do this. Robert, you're overreacting. People will think you're crazy. The notifications piled up like debris. I turned the phone face down, then finally powered it off. Silence. It was the first peace I'd felt in months. The next morning, I returned to the apartment while Robert was out. I knew his schedule. He never missed his favorite cafe before filming. I slipped in quietly, collected the rest of my belongings, clothes, toiletries, laptop. I left the ring light I'd bought him, the furniture I'd built, the little pieces of myself I'd given to his life. On the kitchen counter, I placed the keys. No note, no explanations, just silence. And then I walked out, shutting the door on that chapter of my life. People say breakups feel like ripping off a bandage, but this wasn't a rip. It was a release. For the first time in years, I felt light. The betrayal still burned, replaying in my head like a cruel echo. His mocking laugh, the flood of comments, the way he pointed his phone at me, like I was an object, not a person. But I refused to let him have the ending he wanted. No begging, no fighting, no tears on camera. Just silence. And silence, I realized, could be louder than any words. The first week away from Robert felt like stepping out of a hurricane into still air. At Clara's apartment, the mornings were quiet. No ring light humming, no forced laughter echoing through the walls, no endless scrolling of comments dissecting my every move. I woke early, almost by instinct, and went for runs around her neighborhood. At first my legs felt heavy, my lungs tight, but each day it got easier. The air was crisp, the rhythm of my footsteps steady. Running cleared the fog Robert had left in me. It wasn't just exercise, it was survival. Every stride whispered, "You are free." Meanwhile, my phone became a battlefield I refused to enter. I kept it off for days. When I finally turned it back on, the flood was overwhelming missed calls, dozens of texts, desperate voicemails. "Robert, you can't just disappear. This isn't fair. Robert? Babe, please at least talk to me. Robert? If you don't come back, I'll tell people you abandoned me." The last one twisted my stomach, but I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked him everywhere, his number, his socials, even email. I cut off every channel he used to broadcast himself into my life. For the first time in years, my silence wasn't weakness. It was power. And then, karma began to do what I didn't need to. Clara showed me one evening holding up her phone with wide eyes. "Patricia, you need to see this." On her screen was Robert's live stream clip, the one where he'd mocked me saying he could have someone hotter while his audience laughed. Only this time it wasn't just his 15,000 followers watching. Someone had screen recorded it, uploaded it to Reddit, and the thread had blown up. The title read, "This guy humiliates his girlfriend on livestream." Thoughts. Thousands of comments followed. "This is disgusting. She deserves better. He thinks it's a joke, but this is abuse. Imagine loving someone and they treat you like this for clout." The same strangers who once laughed at me were now turning on him. I didn't feel joy, I didn't celebrate, but I also didn't feel pity. All I felt was confirmation silence had been the right choice. Word spread quickly. Mutual acquaintances started whispering. One old friend messaged me privately. "Honestly, Soph, people think he's toxic now. Brands are pulling out. No one wants to collab with him." Another added, "He tried to spin the breakup like you abandoned him, but everyone remembers that live stream. He's digging his own grave." I didn't ask for updates. They just came to me like little fragments of justice floating on the wind. Robert's empire of validation was crumbling, and he'd built every brick of it with his own hands. Meanwhile, my life was slowly stitching itself back together. At Clara's, I insisted on paying part of the rent. I wanted fairness, not dependence. I started cooking again, rediscovering the joy of making meals just for myself, not for an audience, not for likes, but for nourishment. I bought a new notebook and began journaling. At first it was just scribbles, anger, hurt, confusion. But over time the pages filled with something else, plans, reflections, small moments of gratitude. The Patricia I was becoming felt unfamiliar but stronger. One night while journaling, Clara sat across from me with a mug of tea. She studied me for a moment, then said softly, "You look lighter, Soph. Happier." I blinked at her. "Do I?" She nodded. "When you first came here, it was like your shadow walked in before you. But now, you're starting to shine again." Her words nearly broke me. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd lost until someone reminded me I was still worth finding. Robert, on the other hand, wasn't disappearing quietly. Through friends, I learned he was scrambling, posting teary videos claiming cancel culture had ruined him. He begged for sympathy, painted himself as a victim abandoned by a cold girlfriend. But the internet didn't buy it. His comment sections were flooded with reminders of that clip. People weren't letting him rewrite history. "Apologize to Patricia. Dude, you humiliated her. Own up. Victim, you mocked her on live." No brand wanted to touch him. Even his influencer friends began distancing themselves, afraid of sinking with his ship. I didn't clap back. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. My silence was louder than any rebuttal could ever be. 3 weeks after leaving, I ran into a mutual friend at the grocery store. She hesitated before saying, "Robert's not doing well. He keeps saying he just wants you back." I let out a slow breath. He doesn't want me. He wants an audience. She looked startled, then nodded slowly as if the truth had just clicked into place for her, too. In the stillness of my new routine, I began to notice something strange: peace. Peace in waking up without dread, peace in cooking pasta without a camera watching, peace in knowing my words, my tears, my laughter were mine again. And it struck me sometimes the best revenge isn't fire or fury. Sometimes it's silence. The kind of silence that forces someone to sit with the echo of their own actions. The kind of silence that grows louder every time their cries for attention go unanswered. That was the silence I carried with me now like armor. One evening, as I walked back from a run, the sun dipping low and painting the sky orange, I realized something I wasn't thinking about Robert. Not his voice, not his laugh, not his betrayal. I was thinking about myself, about tomorrow's work project, about the dinner I'd cook, about the life I was building again. For the first time in a long time, my story wasn't about him. It was about me, and I intended to keep it that way. By the time a month had passed, Robert's voice was no longer in my ears, but his shadow lingered in whispers. Mutual friends, social feeds. I couldn't completely avoid even the occasional headline on gossip forums. His downfall was unfolding in real time. He wasn't vanishing quietly. He was unraveling. It started with the videos. A friend texted me a link one afternoon with the words, "You need to see this." I hesitated, but curiosity won. The video opened with Robert in his carefully curated filming corner. Fairy lights glowing behind him, the same ring light illuminating his face. Except this time the brightness only highlighted how tired he looked. His hair was unkempt, his eyes rimmed red. "My ex abandoned me," he began, voice trembling in practiced sorrow. "She left me with bills, left me heartbroken, left me when I needed her most." I froze. He said it with such conviction, as if the live stream that started it all had never existed. What he left out, of course, was the truth. The laughter at my expense, the comments that cut like knives, the suitcase I packed under the sound of his audience mocking me. The internet thankfully hadn't forgotten. The top comments under his video were brutal. "Weren't you the guy who humiliated her live? Stop playing victim, dude. We saw the clip. You didn't lose her. You pushed her away for content." My stomach clenched, but not from pain, from clarity. He wasn't apologizing, he was rewriting. Days turned into weeks, and every so often, Clara or another friend would pass along another update. A brand deal, canceled, a collab withdrawn. Even a Reddit thread cataloging his manipulations. One friend said bluntly, "Honestly, Soph, people think he's toxic now. He's radioactive. No one wants to touch him." I nodded, but I didn't engage. I didn't gloat, because what was there to celebrate? Robert wasn't facing anything I hadn't already lived. The only difference was that this time the audience was turning on him. Then came the email. I hadn't expected it. I'd blocked him everywhere I could. But one morning at work, I opened my inbox, and there it was. Subject line, "Please just hear me out." It was long, pages of excuses dressed up as apologies. "It was just a joke. I never thought it would hurt you like that. I was stressed about growing my platform. I wasn't thinking straight. You know I love you, right? You know I didn't mean it that way." And the dagger nestled in the middle of his rambling. "Don't you think 3 years together is worth one mistake?" I stared at the screen for a long time. My chest tightened, not with longing, but with disbelief. One mistake? Was it one mistake when he turned every dinner into a photo shoot? When he mocked me for views? When he chipped away at my self-worth with comparisons to girls who didn't exist? No, that live stream wasn't a slip. It was the peak of a mountain he'd been climbing for years. And I wasn't about to climb it with him anymore. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, not even out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. The silence gnawed at him more than any words could. A week later, Clara told me Robert had been telling anyone who would listen that he just wanted closure, that I owed him a chance to talk. But I knew what closure meant to him. Not healing, not growth, performance, a redemption arc. Another story to package for his dwindling audience. And then came his lowest moment yet. I didn't watch it, a friend described it to me. He went live again, but this time without the lights, without the polish. Just Robert, bare-faced tears streaking down his cheeks. "I lost the best woman I ever had," he said, voice breaking. "She was kind, supportive, always there for me. And I threw it away for views. If you're watching this, Patricia, I'm sorry. Please come back." For a split second, my heart clenched. 3 years of memories flickered in my mind, the early days, the laughter, the moments when love felt real. But the comments told the rest of the story. "You're only sorry because you got exposed. She doesn't owe you a thing. Apologize to her privately, not on livestream." He was still performing. Even his apology was content. and I refused to be dragged back into his stage. Meanwhile, my life was moving forward. Work was steady. I was sleeping better, eating better. Running had turned into a routine, my body stronger, my mind clearer. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't angry. I was free. And with every ignored email, every unanswered message, every quiet refusal to engage, I realized something. I hadn't just left Robert. I'd left the version of myself who would have stayed. It took months, but I began to feel whole again. The silence I once feared had become my shield. Robert could cry, scream, plead to the void, but none of it reached me. Because when regret comes too late, it's not redemption. It's noise. And I was finally done listening. It happened on a night I didn't expect. Clara and I had been invited to a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I hesitated at first. Large gatherings still felt heavy, like too many eyes might remind me of the ones that once watched me unwillingly. But she convinced me. It's time to live again, Soph. He doesn't own your joy. So I went, not alone. By then, months had passed, and I had met someone new. Anthony. He wasn't flashy, he didn't chase attention, and he never once pointed a phone at me when I wasn't ready. He was steady, warm, and present in a way Robert had never been. That night, walking into the restaurant with Anthony's hand steady in mine, I felt grounded. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for impact. And then I saw him. Robert. He was sitting at the far end of the long table, his shoulders hunched, his presence dimmer than I remembered. When his eyes landed on me, they widened. For a heartbeat, he froze. I felt Anthony squeeze my hand gently, silently, asking if I was okay. I nodded, straightening my back, refusing to shrink. The night went on. People laughed, toasted, shared stories. Anthony and I sat among them, comfortable and light. But I could feel Robert's gaze burning holes across the table. At one point, I caught him staring at Anthony, not with envy exactly, but with something heavier, regret. Later, when I stepped outside for air, the cool night brushing against my skin, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Patricia. I turned. Robert stood there, shadows under his eyes, his once confident smile nowhere to be found. Can we talk? His voice cracked softer than I'd ever heard it. I exhaled slowly. About what? He looked desperate, hands fidgeting. About us. About everything. I messed up. You know that. I was stupid. I was blinded by followers, by attention. But you were the best thing I ever had. For a moment, I just studied him. The man who once humiliated me in front of strangers was now standing alone, stripped of his audience, begging for the one thing he couldn't monetize. I made a mistake, he said, voice trembling. He wasn't what I thought, Soph. None of them were. I see that now. Please, can we try again? His words hung in the air, thick with history. 3 years of love and pain, laughter and betrayal. I thought of the nights I stayed awake questioning if I was enough. I thought of the comments mocking me while he smiled. I thought of the suitcase, the silence, the freedom that followed. And then I thought of Anthony waiting inside, the way he looked at me, not as content, but as a person. I shook my head. You wanted someone more exciting. Someone with followers. Someone you could brag about, I said quietly. You made that choice, Robert. And I made mine. He flinched like the words struck deeper than any shout could have. But we had years, Soph. Doesn't that matter? I met his gaze steady. It did. But not anymore. I don't carry dead weight into my future. For once, Robert had no comeback. No grin, no laughter, just silence. I turned and walked back inside. Anthony looked up, concern flickering across his face. I smiled softly, sliding into my seat. He reached for my hand beneath the table, squeezing it gently, grounding me in the present. Across the room, Robert lingered by the door watching. But this time his eyes didn't hold power over me. They held emptiness. That night, as Anthony and I walked home under the city lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace without the shadow of fear. Robert had once controlled the narrative of my life, turning me into a character for strangers. But he no longer mattered. His stage had collapsed, his audience gone. And I wasn't his prop anymore. I was free. People often think endings are loud, full of screams, tears slamming doors. But sometimes the loudest ending is the quietest. No fight, no spectacle, just the realization that someone no longer has a place in your story. That's how Robert's chapter closed in my life. And as I held Anthony's hand, laughter spilling into the night, I knew this truth. Sometimes silence is the loudest revenge.